All right. Hi, everyone. I am Julia Rafal-Baer. I'm the CEO of Women Leading Ed and ILO Group. We are a women-owned education strategy and policy firm. Women Leading Ed, we are the largest national network of women in educational leadership. Our mission is to grow and strengthen a strong pipeline of women leaders. And we do this through individual and group coaching. We run cohort-based programming models. We have peer-to-peer networks. And when you get into that top job, we offer 24/7 crisis supports and practical opportunities to help build women's skills and resiliency so that they can stay long-term in the sector. We are so thrilled to be partnering with the National Center on Grow Your Own for this live digital dialogue. Allyship in Action, Men as Advocates for Women in K-12 Leadership. I am so deeply honored to be sharing this virtual stage with some incredible friends. Dr. Christina Grant, the State Superintendent of Washington, D.C., Dr. Arsenio Romero, the Secretary of the New Mexico Public Education Department, Dr. Thomas Taylor, the Superintendent of Stafford County Public Schools in Virginia, and David Donaldson, the founder of the National Center for Grow Your Own. I want to thank all of you for joining us and engaging in today's dialogue. For those of you that are watching live, we are going to adapt the conversation based on the questions that you asked. So please keep your questions coming. I will be monitoring them and we'll adjust based on what you want to hear about. If you are watching and on social channels, please use the hashtag #WomenLeadingEd. The gender gap. Y'all know it is real, it is enduring. We are a sector that is dominated by women at every rung except the top, and this is particularly glaring for women of color. ILO Group puts out the only publicly available data set around what's happening in the state of the superintendency, the Superintendent Research Project. In July 2018, women represented less than 28% of superintendents in that top 500 largest districts. Fast forward, 6 years later, July 2023, the proportion had marginally risen. It was 30.4%. That's 152 women. To put in perspective, this past year, we only saw 43 new women enter the top 500. We even saw a decline between 2019 and 2020. That's ultimately why Women Leading Ed got formed. We knew that we needed to draw so much more attention to better understand the research and the data, and to be able to create much more of a North Star so that we could work together collectively, men and women, to really transform the odds for women in our country. The strategies that we've put together are detailed in Women Leading Ed's advocacy agenda. The time is now, a new playbook for educational leadership. The playbook calls for actions at the district, the state, and the federal level, all around the idea of how we can work together to ensure that every single woman has a fair shot to get to the top in our sector. Our playbook synthesizes years of workplace research and outlines strategies and practices to transform the latter. There's 5 areas that we focus on. Number 1, creating and promoting intentional support systems to prepare women for leadership roles. We're doing that nationally at Women Leading Ed. We're also calling for that to occur regionally, state by state, and district by district. Number 2, we need to rebalance the hiring process through requirements and the promotion of best practice. We have got to get rid of the way that bias seeps in to every single aspect of the hiring process. Number 3, we need to get real about providing family and well-being supports, and this is particularly true for men and women, and the increased elder care responsibilities that we have in this country and will continue to have, that are so instrumental to making sure that we can all do our jobs well while also taking care of those important responsibilities. Number 4, we need to set public goals for female leadership, and we need to increase the transparency around those goals. We're doing that on the national side, but this needs to happen state by state, district by district. Ultimately, what gets measured is what gets done. Number 5, we need to ensure financial fairness, equal pay for equal work. But unfortunately, we are so far from that right now. The pay gap differences between men and women, both at the district level and the state level, are astronomical, and it has to be something that we address immediately. The playbook also calls out the absolutely vital role of allies, men specifically. There is no path forward if we are not working together, men and women, to advance policy, culture, and practice changes in order to close the gender gap in educational leadership. That is the focus of today's discussion. Allyship. It's essential for dismantling systemic barriers that women face, and we need to cultivate a shared commitment towards bridging those gaps so that we can transform our schools, our districts, our states, and ultimately see a national shift in the kinds of issues we've seen in getting women to the top. I want to bring our panelists into the conversation. We're going to start first with you, Superintendent Grant. your leadership journey. It has been an inspiration to watch, to participate in. Tell us a little bit about your experience as a rising leader and the role allyship has played. How have men supported and advanced your career journey? And how, in turn, are you trying to make sure that you sponsor effectively the next generation of leaders?
Well, first, I mean, it's such a joy to be here. You know, we came into the space and some of us are in session or we're navigating budgets. It was snowing this morning in DC and now the sun is shining. You actually can't make it up. And so to take this time to be in community with folks who have been a part of my leadership journey, and raising this critically important topic in discussion, is really important. And so first, Julia, though you are not a man, you are critical and a core part of my leadership journey. I pride myself in saying that I was the 10th female superintendent that you helped land the seat. And from day one in San Antonio, where this was not even a thought in my brain, you were like, get your application in. You know, you're very nice and pleasant here, but you're quite scary in other settings. And so I do want to publicly say thank you. But when I think about, you know, three things together. One, my doctoral research is on women in leadership, particularly Black women in the superintendent. And all 15 women spoke about a man that told them they could be a superintendent, or that in a meeting let them lead the presentation. 1% things that dramatically shifted the way that they were seen, the way that they were heard, the way that they were seen by others. And that's the core role that men have to play when we think about what true allyship means. It's not just saying like, hey, you can do this job one day. It's being really laser focused on how you position someone. How do you sponsor them? Two, I sit here because I've had exceptional men as leaders. Everyone from John White to John King to Bill Hite, who was my superintendent in Philadelphia. You know, Bill told me that I would be a superintendent at an age that I will not disclose. And I like laughed at him. I said, absolutely not. I would never want to do your job. And again, not just saying it every single day, but ensuring that I was on his cabinet, ensuring that for 6 consecutive years, no matter how the work structured, no matter what work I took or work I put aside, I remained a cabinet member that reported to the superintendent. Because it's these little things that women may or may not know as they're navigating their career. Who you report to matters. Access to the superintendent matters. Being the person to raise your hand and say, I'll do it, even if you don't understand, matters. And some of it is the way that women and men show up in a workplace. It is known that a woman will look at a job description, and unless they can do every single thing on the job description, they won't submit their name. Men are not qualified at all. And they're like, I got it. Put me in, coach. And it's that mindset shift that if you're being an ally, they can sit you down and say, yeah, you don't know anything about alternative education, but you can learn. Let's figure out what we got to do to get you up to speed, because you know how to teach children, you have a value that aligns with mine, and you can lead the system. And so I think about what it has meant to serve Bill and other men who never faltered in saying like, hey, you can figure it out. I think about a time I was with John White at a public hearing. John was like, I'm gonna start the hearing, you're gonna end the hearing. And started the hearing and then said, now I'm gonna turn things over to Christina. And the truth is I bombed at that hearing. But the opportunity, like the faith, the belief, and then when the meeting was over, he sat down and he said, all right, let's pick that apart. What do you need to do differently next time? Who should be in the room? And then he did it again. And now I can walk into any room. And I think that the challenge with allyship is, how do you ensure, like, how are you intentional in saying, like, I see something in this person. How do you make sure they see it in themselves? And then last but certainly not least, it's the group of individuals that are gathered here today that we see each other. I came into this place and Dr. Taylor was like, I see you, Dr. Grant. We need men to be checking on us the same way that society checks on them by design. If you see a woman in leadership and she, you know, you just saw an article about a rough budget meeting or they had a rough school board meeting, are you taking the time to reach out to that leader and say, hey, I've actually sat in what you're sitting in right now. Here's what you should do. Did you think about reaching out to all your board members individually? Did you think about having a retreat? Let me introduce you to the person who runs retreats for me, because the dynamics are different. How do you fill the gap? How do you pour into women in leadership so that we can run the race? And I'll stop there, but that's what's top of mind as I think about the importance of allyship. I wouldn't be sitting here if it were not for men who were super intentional about me until I was clear that I needed to be intentional about myself.
So powerful. Secretary Romero, I want to bring you in. You have been such a long champion of advancing women in their leadership careers. When you left your district superintendency to move into the state role, you ensured that your interim successor was a woman on your senior leadership team, and you were very intentional about the moves to make that happen. I'd love to hear more from you about what you've observed over your years in leadership, about the best way to support and advance women in leadership, and what you've done over the years that you feel like has seen some progress.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Julia, for having me here today. It's great to be amongst such wonderful educators across the nation. You know, I think back and just listening to Christina talk, it brought back a lot of memories for me too. I think this is year 28 for me. And I have had such influential people in my life to help me get to where I'm at today. I started off with my mom. She was a first grade teacher, and because of her, that's why I got started into this. I have an amazing wife that's an educator that is so much better at this than I ever am. But I think about all the peers that I've had along the way where I've had mentorship. And the reason I'm in the job I am today is because of all these people. And I can name them off. There's just multiple people along the way that were wonderful mentors that were female. They were amazing. They took care of me. They got me to where I need to be today. And even getting on this today, when we got onto this Zoom and I got to see you, Julia, and I got to see you, Christina. The reason I'm in this job right now today is for that same reason. You all helped me get to where I'm at today, and we continue to take care of each other and check on each other, and make sure that we have all the tools that we need to be able to be successful. This fight absolutely is a two-way street, which we take care of each other. But you know, we as leaders in education, you know, after you do this for a while, you start to realize the things that are really important is when you see the people that you got to work with move on and do amazing things. And I think about all the people that I've been able to mentor along the way, and trying to repay back some of the work that's been given to me, in seeing them become from teachers to principals to superintendents, and then also moving on into state level opportunities to take over and do amazing things for their state. And Julia, you talked about, you know, me leaving my last superintendency. It's exactly what happened. I wanted to make sure that the person that was taking over for me was the best possible person. And she did amazing where she was at. And now she's even moved on to do more amazing things. And I can't wait to see what she does next. I think about when I first got into this position here as Secretary of Education for the state of New Mexico, and the first order of business was building my team. And who did I reach out to? I reached out to you, like, help me with this. Like, who are the best people out there? And just by you and I brainstorming back and forth, I was able to put together a rock star team, and we are doing amazing things in New Mexico, and we are moving very, very fast. I've got risk takers. I've got people that know the job, that have experience, that make me better every single day. So I just want to maybe start off by saying thank you to everyone out there that mentored me. Thank you to you for everything that you do, Christina, everything that you do. And we're going to continue to take care of each other.
It's incredible. People want to go work for great leaders. You're easy to help support. Dr. Taylor, I want to turn it to you now. Earlier in the month, Jay-Z advised us in his Grammy speech that we have to keep showing up. Tell me a bit about your journey as someone who actively shows up and sponsors and advances the leadership of women. What have you noticed? How do you try and change the culture and mindsets that are required across your teams to combat what I see as a sort of scarcity mindset? This idea that there's only so many women who can be in leadership roles. Obviously, it's flawed thinking, but it exists, and that scarcity mindset impacts culture. How do you get around that? How do you make sure that you just keep showing up?
Well, it's such an honor just to show up today and to be invited to be a part of this conversation. Julia, you've been so influential in my life, and just the opportunity to connect with friends like Christina and Arsenio. It's just been a pleasure to be along this journey and to be a part of their journey, just like they're a part of my journey in leadership. But mindset is the right word. And whether it's a scarcity mindset or whether a deficit mindset, however you want to phrase it, mindset is the right word. It's the easiest thing to say, the hardest thing to correct without some really intentional actions. and being really deliberate and out there in front on an issue like this. I would say that from my experience, I joined the Mama's Boy Club with Secretary Romero. I'm the son of a single mother who was a bank secretary in Washington, D.C. And I can tell you that I relate all of my life lessons to things that my mother taught me and about how to be in my life, how to be in my relationships, and what that looks like in my professional space as well. And so I look at the things that were barriers for her in her professional life and in her personal life. And I look at how I can be a great shoulder to shoulder sponsor and a great shoulder to shoulder partner with the women leaders who I know are poised for excellence in this space. We have all of the opportunities in the world being in education just because of our industry. It's a female-dominated industry for the majority of the workforce, but yet in the leadership, it's not. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to a large portion of our workforce. So being a sponsor and being an ally means removing barriers, removing real barriers, removing glass barriers, removing imagined barriers that folks have about their own trajectory and about the things that they know that they can accomplish, and being really intentional about that. Being bold and being a woman leader is not always rewarded. And so how do we create structures, systems, and processes that can recognize the contribution that folks are bringing to the table and then elevate that leadership to a new level? I think another really important piece of this puzzle is having a reality check, having folks that can be honest with male leaders who are allies. I can tell you that, Julia, you are one of those people for me. And I know that Arsenio feels the same way, in that you can bring a sense of reality to a conversation that then can have a ripple effect with a lot of other people. And that ultimately leads to calling out biases and checking those biases in a really deliberate way. I'm super proud of my short tenure in Stafford County, just south of Christina in the burbs of DC. The national statistics that I've looked at look an awful lot like 55% of educational leaders are women, but in Stafford County, since I've gotten here, it's closer to 85%. And I'm thrilled with that. Of course, you take another layer to that and look at leaders of color. It looks more like 18 to 20% in public education. For us, it's 34 or higher. We're proud of the progress we're making, but that progress that we're making is tied to a shift in mindset, being very intentional and setting goals that we proclaim loudly and are very proud of, and that are a part of our organization and what we want to move forward. I'll just close out this section of the conversation by saying thank you to all the people that chose to be a part of this call today. I saw a couple names from Stafford County. I'm super proud of that. And just am glad that you all are here to be a part of this, because you can spread this conversation and spread this message to other people as well.
David, I want to bring you in now. You're somebody who has worked under and with so many different dynamic and powerful women leaders, but allyship isn't always easy. And sometimes it's really hard to break within these bias systems and cultures, even when we approach it with the best intentions. I'm really interested to hear from you, David, about how you've worked to be an ally despite those roadblocks, and especially given that you were overseeing so much of this talent function in the state of Tennessee. How have you learned to step back? How have you learned to take a back seat and support these strong women leaders you've worked for? And what do you think that can be done very practically to empower future women leaders in stronger ways?
Yeah, so again, just like everyone, thank you so much for having me. And I swear that I wrote this down beforehand about my mom as well. So I'm going to build off of Secretary Romero and Superintendent Taylor. Starting with my mom and the way I was raised. My mom exposed me to hard work, to schools. She was literally a vacation Bible school teacher for over 2 decades, but also worked before school care and was my school cafeteria worker. She also gave me taught me my faith that I believe in. My sister, Kelly, shout out to her, for going to law school and taught me about public speaking and worked with me. I grew up with a speech impediment. Was not able to speak until I was about 5 or 6 years old. Significant. She played my translator. And then my sister Erin was very creative. She started doing makeup. That led her to do paintings. And then she started working with individuals who happened to be burn victims, which led her to do prosthetics. And so that encouraged me about creative and making connections, which led to talent, working with labor work and our Tennessee work that I got to do. But I say all this to say that I think I actually entered the workforce pretty naive because of being surrounded and raised by very strong women. It's like the Barbie movie. I literally was like, when I was watching it, I thought it was a documentary at first. When it's, in the perfect sense, I'm like, that's just the way things are. Like, yeah, I'm just Ken. Like, that's all I ever knew. But I think as I entered the workplace, and soon after entering, I should say, unfortunately, a dose of reality. Speaking of the strong women I worked for, I would say Veronica Conforme. She gave me my first shot to move to the cabinet level, and she molded me. Julia, we both share, Dr. Lillian Wolry, and relentlessly believed in me. And I know she did you. She also taught me how to play chess while everyone else was playing checkers. And then with Penny, I always say she's the one who gave me autonomy. And then she gave me a budget to implement those crazy ideas that I had. But without naming the three of them in this next piece, let me say some of the things that I had to play that I did not have to do when I worked for a male leader. And so I played translator. I looked like funders' grandsons, meaning, yes, funders were white male in a lot of the places we worked with. And so I was brought around to translate and to interact with them. I did the meeting before the meeting. I did the meeting after the meeting to make sure they understood what my boss had said. This one is screwed up, but I waited around evening events to make sure the superintendent made it to her car safely due to things, and we'll leave it at that. I nipped things in the bud, and the amount of times that I had to vouch for my leader is crazy to me when you just heard the three names I mentioned. And so that is something that I think always sticks with me. I would say that also it's the role of working for a district soup. There's a certain level of oversight and power and authority they have that is constantly challenged. And then working for state soups where you don't have control, so you have to operate via influence. And both are very, very difficult positions. And the things that I heard from the respective folks that challenged them was just, again, never heard that with the male leaders that I worked for. And so I'd close this question with this, is that in my experience, I don't think I actually was in the back seat. I actually think I got to ride shotgun. I think I gained more from these experiences working for these three dynamic leaders. And it made me who I am today. And they just build off of the foundation that my mom and two older sisters set for me.
David, thank you so much. And you've raised something that's really important here. Allyship can be uncomfortable, but can also be incredibly empowering for everyone that's involved in it. Ultimately, authentic allyship, it's more than just being a phone a friend mentor. It means leveraging one's personal networks to actually advance women in their journeys. It means doing more than just giving the appearance of being an ally. It requires men to stand up, to call out bias, to take action to undo it. It also means that men with power are doing things that would be harder for those without the same levels of power to do. Things like actually taking leave time are one of the big examples that comes up so often for women. The personal advocacy of male allies is also so vital to dismantling barriers for women, and women of color especially. Superintendent Taylor, we talk a lot about hiring practices, that building a leadership team starts with addressing bias in those hiring practices, but that actually starts with identifying and acknowledging that that bias is real. How have you seen this show up in your career, and how have you managed hiring processes to combat instances of bias and to reflect on process to ensure things like pay equity and transparency are occurring?
Sadly, I think everyone can identify with this, and the fact that there are no scruples in some of the rooms that we have been in, where we have seen, I'm sure, some pretty awful conversations that if played back, no one would be proud that they were a part of. And I can reflect on a couple where I have seen really strong, fantastic women leaders get pigeonholed into the best fit trap or the number two trap. This person's a great number two, or I'd love to have them do this, but not that. And I got to tell you that this is a real opportunity for us in our industry to shine, because there is nothing that our folks can't do because of the broad range of experiences that our leaders get at lots of different levels, whether it be the principalship or building level leadership or in central office. Everyone has to manage budgets. Everybody has to manage people. So these skills are all transferable into some really great outlets. So very seldom do we have to worry about whether or not someone can do a job, but rather, can we promote people so that their strengths can really shine in a really dramatic and vibrant way? And so there are some strategies that I think make a big difference. I think, like you said earlier, when you opened up this webinar, setting some goals and being pretty public about setting some goals, calling out specific biases when you see them also matters tremendously. Making sure that you have processes that support a diverse applicant pool. And this is everything from like contracting a great search firm, working with a group like ILO Group that's actually going to support getting diverse candidates into that space, to having a blind review process for resumes, any number of things, making sure that you have diverse panels that are represented in the decision-making process, and being very intentional and deliberate about what you're looking for and what skills you want to capitalize on and elevate in your organization. Having a standardized hiring process to the best of your ability, and maybe even, and this may be a little controversial, maybe even acknowledging some barriers in that process and maybe differentiating your standardized process to account for those barriers in a very intentional way. I think that as we get a little bit more advanced in this space, looking at how we constitute years of experience and how we look at breaks in service and how we look at family commitment and how we value those and assign a financial and monetary reward to those things so that people aren't penalized for making really tough decisions about their family and how they support their family. I'll just conclude with an example. Recently, I had some intentional turnover in one particular department of my organization. And it happened to be in a space where it was a really highly compensated group of folks. And looking at the gender inequity in the salary of those folks and the workload, it was grossly imbalanced. And I was not proud that that was a good representation of our organization. Looking at how that has been reformed and the changes in personnel, that is a group that absolutely should be highly compensated. And looking at the gender makeup of that team today and where folks are in the organization and how they're compensated is a much better reflection of our organization. Every day is a great day to undo a past wrong. And I'm not saying that everybody has to do everything all at once, but picking one discrete corner of your organization to audit, one discrete corner of your organization to look at deeply and make different decisions about how that is organized can make a significant difference. And if you do that once a week, once a month, even once a year, over a very short period of time, you're going to see transformative change that you can be proud of. And it is more representative of the values that you have in your organization.
Thank you for that, Thomas. And I really appreciate how much you just brought that back to how important it is to just start with small change. Like, there are changes that you can make every single day. It does not have to feel so overwhelming, but taking those small steps become the kind of ways that we get to the bigger change that's required. Superintendent Grant, I am interested in hearing from you on this one. So I recently posted on LinkedIn about some of the toxic comments that women in education leadership experience. I asked for people to write in what they themselves have experienced because we need to name it to change it. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of women responded to this, and much of it was incredibly painful and all of it incredibly familiar to me. I'd like to highlight just a few of these because, again, I think we have to acknowledge how bias is shaping language and ultimately the career trajectories for the women in our space who are experiencing it. Here's a few. While I was driving a strategic planning process, a C-suite leader passed me at the water refill station. He said, "Are you being a good girl? If my principal looked like you when I was in high school, I'd have come more often. You're too cute to be a boss of anything. You're too passionate and emotional. You need to be more like us men. Stop caring so much. Being competitive is not an attractive trait in a woman." At an awards banquet, "We might have won that award if your dress showed more cleavage." From an HR person, "I think you enjoy being difficult." I could go on, but you get the idea. And I know you and every other woman hearing this relates to a few, if not all of those. It brings me to the point of the question here. Bias is real, it's enduring, it is definitely not going away, not without some real systemic change, real action. How do we get things to change?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I don't know, for all the folks watching, this is year 24. And so in some respects, you get exhausted by it, but it doesn't go away. First, I want to start by thanking Thomas, David, and Arsenio's mothers, right? That I like, strong women raise strong men who then know how to be allies to strong women. Like that needs to be some sort of t-shirt. And, listening to David, who has served like some of my heroes in the work, you get emotional because I think about, Louis Farabee is the chancellor of DC Public Schools, and we go to meetings together, we leave meetings together, we co-conspire on the meeting before the meeting, we ensure like you're going to leave this slide, and DCPS reports to the state education agency, right? So I think about the level of energy and effort that he puts in every single day over 3 years. I'm 5'4", and so we norm on like, where am I going to wear heels? Where will I stand in the step and repeat? Don't put me next to this person, put me here. Make sure the superintendent is sitting in the first seat because she is the most senior person. It's exhausting. And I'm grateful that I've been surrounded by like so much of what David had to say resonates, everything from making sure you get to your car. And then there's hope. I think there's a tremendous amount of hope, particularly in the work that you're doing, Julia, creating not just this conversation, but lots of safe spaces. I think if I'm not fortunate for anything, I think 7 years with Bill in Philadelphia, where every single day he modeled through his treatment of women on his cabinet, how we would be treated, how we would be spoken to, and not just in the strategic work or the leading of the system, but simple things that like, this is a chief, call her chief. Do not call her by her first name. When I joined the district, I just got my doctorate, and the intentional work of both the chancellor and the deputy mayor to inform for people. You can call her doctor, you can call her superintendent, you cannot call her Christina. And how you have to communicate that over and over and over again. So, if I had a blueprint, one, I would say work for an amazing Black woman, right? I have the pleasure of serving a very, very strong leader in Mayor Bowser. She is the only African-American woman in this country who has been elected to 3 4-year consecutive terms. And that alone should articulate just how strong she is and just how clear she is about the vision for this city. And every single day, I even see how people, how we all have to be allies for her and her work. But when I think about the blueprint from the future, it is holding spaces like these. And it's Julia, unfortunately, reading the really, really hard things because people are watching right now and they're like, oh, I'm not alone here. This isn't crazy. It's not crazy that I've always been called the number 2, but I really want to be the number 1. And I need to be in a place, not just to name women leading it, but I need to be in a place where people can see me, they can make sense of my meaning, and I can learn how to be surrounded by men who will be allies. I don't know. I haven't been choked up in a while over it. because we just navigate through it every single day. And there are men who stand in the gap for us. And so if I had a magic wand, or if I could write a blueprint, I wish more men would speak, not, in front of their leadership team and in front of the main stage, about just how exhausting it is to be a woman in leadership, and just how much work men can do to make it less exhausting. When a woman makes the right statement in the meeting, don't let the next man sitting next to them take credit for the comment. Circle back and say, isn't that what the superintendent just said? When you and David is nodding his head. When I say the thing the first time, David reminds me of my deputy for operations. He's like, the superintendent has spoken. And that's a complete sentence. And so men have to, it is the Barbie movie. You gotta actively be an ally. And then Julia, you create the space to unpack what it feels like to navigate in that world. If we could create those types of tag team environments, and maybe there's a world where Women Leading Ed does do a set of trainings for men who are supporting very strong women in leadership. How do you take care of your leader? Professionally, personally, how do you help them drive their agenda? Because sometimes men need to be told, yeah, you need to hold the door. It's not your time to talk. You didn't swear in the Bible. Your face is not on the wall. But if you serve, if you're loyal, if you stay the course, that woman will open up every single door to the rest of your career. And I think men need to hear that. There's value in being loyal in ways that women always know that we think we'll be super loyal and maybe it'll be our time. Men think it's gonna be our time, regardless of what we do or not. And I'm sorry I spoke too long here, but there's something good to what we could do if we hold space on both sides. If we're really transparent with men who are doing this work on how do you support women in leadership? And then on the back end, how do you create safe spaces for women to unpack what they're going through so that you don't leave the profession, but you know that you're not crazy. Because that time when that person says like, hey, well, can we grab a drink? And you're like, I don't want to drink with you. I don't want to play golf with you. I don't want to smoke a cigar with you. I want to wake up every single day and do right by children. And I shouldn't have to do those things to do right by children.
Thank you. This is incredible. And it tees up nicely, David, for what I wanted to talk to you about next here. I'm so excited about our partnership. The National Center for Grow Your Own is so uniquely positioned to help to really think about not only how we change talent policies and systems at the state and district level. I think Superintendent Grant's points about the kinds of trainings that help men to be really strong allies and supportive of strong women leaders is a tremendously powerful idea. And our organizations are coming together to really start to think this through. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in districts and states that gives you hope about our ability to turn this ship in the right direction, implement policies that are more robust, help to better support women, and help to do what Superintendent Grant just charged all of us with doing. And where do you think people go wrong in these systems when they're implementing?
Yeah, tough act to follow, right? Thank you, Superintendent Grant. I feel like you're saying things that I haven't felt since my last conversations with Lillian. So just thank you for that. I think what we are seeing is definitely an increased proactiveness in recruitment and building pipelines. Gone are the days that we can rely on our ed prep providers to produce talent en masse. Over the last 10 years, enrollment has dropped. And so seeing districts and states take a more proactive lens in partnership with their ed prep providers. And it all goes back to that phrase, like, never let a crisis go to waste. And so you heard Superintendent Taylor talk about the data and looking into the different demographics and who is being served and who is not being served. And I think we're seeing more of that. And we're seeing more of that captured in these new grow your own and registered apprenticeship type programs. It just so happens, I was thinking about it right before this call, Julia, that Stafford County is in our National Registered Apprenticeship District Network, and both New Mexico and DC are in our state network, which is super cool. And just seeing, the collaborations all three of these leaders have with their labor entities, with their state agency in the case of Stafford County, like, it's just so cool to see. And so all of a sudden it becomes, wait a second, I used to just rely on what was provided to me. Now I have the power. I can be more proactive. This is employer driven. So what are my values? What are my priorities? What are my non-negotiables that are in place? And look, if we're going to solve teacher shortages and principal quality issues and things like that, some people are going to attack this from an altruistic lens, and some, it's just quite simply, it's math. It is simple math that the hidden potential, and I think hidden is a powerful word because it's hidden often to men, and I'll make an I statement that I did not see in the past, but our support staff is overwhelmingly female. And we know 80% of teachers happen to be women, usually 50% of principals are women. And then I think it's around 20%, Julia, based on a lot of the research you have done, are superintendents. So there are just clear breakdowns. So even sometimes, and this goes back to translator, we code switch and we say, this is a workforce development issue. This is where your talent is. And this is who needs to be given the chance. I think regardless of gender, we need to talk more about the TAP. And the TAP is there are so many people that count themselves out before they start. But when a leader, and you heard it from a lot of these folks' journeys today, when someone tapped them and said, did you ever think about being a superintendent? We need to have those conversations where we actually say, you're a leader. Have you ever thought about being a teacher? Have you ever thought being a principal? Have you ever thought about being a superintendent? But that intentionality, because Dr. Grant couldn't be more right. A lot of men, 99.9%, have no problem applying for the job, that they read the description, not the requirements. Oh, I can do that. They don't look, we don't look at the requirements. We just look at the email address that we got to send it in. And so that plays a lot into this. And yet a lot of the work, this was always really interesting, was when we talked to superintendents, when I was at the state level, talked to district soups, and they said, look, David, I don't got a principal shortage. And Superintendent Baszler talks a lot about this. I have a principal quality issue that I'm looking to address. Every time I have a principal opening, the same 15 people apply, 14 of them are named Greg, and I don't want any of them. Don't you think I would have hired one of them by now if I thought they were any good? Who I want is the third grade teacher, who she has the respect of her peers, but simply because we don't pay teachers enough, she's still paying off her student loans from becoming a teacher. And she's not willing to take out more loans to get that master's degree in school leadership. And leaders like Superintendent Grant, Secretary Romero, and Superintendent Taylor are attacking these types of issues head on. And Julia, to your point in closing, this idea of working with you and your amazing team to look to get the occupation of a superintendent eligible for apprenticeship can be a game changer. The work you have done to develop these pipelines and cohorts, we can actually codify this through the U.S. Department of Labor. And so we look forward in partnership with your leadership, Julian, your amazing team, we're already working on teachers. We're already working with principals. Let's get the superintendents next and get more women into the places that they've deserved to be in for a long, long time.
Thank you, David. Cannot wait for us to really hit the ground running on this part of the strategy together. Secretary Romero, last question over to you, and then I'm going to do a final question to the group. Part of removing barriers is ultimately about how men show up and do the things that we know really matter too. A big part of this is around family and well-being supports. We know elder care responsibilities are only increasing in our society, and we really need to make sure that for these jobs, for you leaders to last them a long time, that we are really focusing on wellness. And I just want to say it, men can and should be helping to model this. It's just good for everyone. How do you work to ensure that wellness policies and practices get normalized in our systems? How do you try and model that within your own team?
Oh, that's great comment and question. And I've been thinking about what everybody's saying, and it's bringing back all kinds of memories and kind of connections to me too. And I was taking some notes down here, and it was like you asked the right question. This is exactly what I was thinking is, what is my part in all this? And, when I've been able to go into as a principal, as a superintendent, now a secretary, many times when I go into these systems, there's some brokenness to it and all kinds of reasons for brokenness. But a lot of that has to do around the environment, the culture. And I know that I have to be, I can control myself for sure. And I have to create that environment that I want to be able to be successful and that I want to be in every day. And that means that I want to make sure everybody else feels that same way. Everyone should be able to feel like they're coming in powerful, that they're smart, but they're also safe. And there's nothing that I lose patience more for than when I see a bully or I see some toxic kind of behavior happening. And when that happens, we have to stop it immediately and correct the errors of the past also. And I'm sure I don't do it perfect every single time and I make mistakes every day, but I'm trying to do better and better. I think about the people that I want to surround myself with now too. And just listening to some of the conversation, when we have these leadership openings, you're right. Just like what David was saying is like we get the same people applying for the same jobs. And what I found out is I got to get past that now. I can't be letting people come to me. I've got to go out and recruit the best people. And the best people out there, I've been able to find some amazing ones. And it's because I've been able to reach out to my connections across the country. Julia, you are my go-to person every single time. And because of that, I've had to go out, recruit, find the right people, and I've done that. And on my leadership team that I have here in a state that needs a lot of support, a lot of hard work, it is hard to do this every single day. We get a lot of criticism, whether we were male, female, black, white, LGBTQ, whatever what subgroup is. This is a hard job to be in, and people will find the cracks in whatever we have out there. And so, but because of that, I've been able to surround myself with some amazing people, and that makes it a whole lot easier for me also. We take care of each other. And so I'm just so thankful for the team that I have. I'm thankful for you, but I'm also just reflecting too on the people that helped me get to where I'm at now. And I don't understand all the time why people have been able to see things in me, but they helped me get there. And now all I'm trying to do now is trying to do the same thing. And when I think about the people that I've been able to bring into my team, get them into these leadership positions, when we're having the conversation versus number one and number two, there's some truth to that. Right now I'm in that number one position and I have some amazing people working for me in the number two position. But I was reflecting on this, on these conversations I've had with these amazing individuals. And as I'm talking to them about the job, talking to them about what the work that is in front of us and how hard it's going to be, the next part of our conversation is, what are we going to think? We're going to think about now what you're going to do next. And we've done that from day one about what they want to do, how we're going to get them there. And we're going to make sure that they have all the experiences that they need to be able to be successful, to go on to be amazing superintendents and take over states. And they're going to be so much better than I am at this job. And again, I'm just thankful for them taking the risk with me to do this work.
Thank you for that. I want to end on a useful and optimistic note. I would like for each of you to take 2 minutes or less and tell one story or one way in which you've seen other men be strong allies. We're going to go around. Why don't we start with Superintendent Taylor, and then we'll go over to you, Superintendent Romero, or Secretary Romero. David, we'll have you go third, and we'll close out with Dr. Grant.
So I might skip a story and just say that great bosses provide for a lot of flexibility, but great bosses sometimes leave. And what gets memorialized is what's written into policy. So I would say that my work in how I feel like I can be a great sponsor, shoulder to shoulder ally, is to transition from having great practices into great policy. And so I think of the kind of like the next step for my space and a place where I think I can add a lot of value as an ally is to memorialize good practice into policy.
As I think about this, I think about how I always need to be in a mode of where I can improve myself. I'm always listening. I'm trying to gain more information on how to do a better job myself. And I've got a wonderful boss myself. Our governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, she is one powerful person, and I respect her every single day. I emulate to be more like her every single day, and I learn from her every single day. And the way I do that is listening to her and really taking to heart what she's telling me, because even when she is working with me in a positive way, I'm learning. And when she's when I messed up, I'm learning from that too. And so I want to thank her. And then as I go down the list, people that put me in positions of superintendents, these were some amazing female mentors. Me being in positions of a principal, I had amazing female mentors. And I'm going to go back all the way to the beginning with my mom. You know, she helped me get to where I'm at today. And because of this wonderful support system, I am where I'm at. And now it's my turn to try to set the next pathway for leaders out there. And hopefully we're going to continue to work together to make that happen. And just thank you for having me here again today, Julia.
Yeah. Somebody that modeled the way that I try to always remember was Dr. Andres Alonso, who's the former CEO of Baltimore City Schools. The way he always spoke about Lillian was reverence. And then working for Lillian and the way she spoke about him, it was really interesting to see two people that were true peers, but with just such a deferential respect for one another. That is something that I always admired. And then also, if I understand correctly, I think Sonia is the longest serving superintendent in Baltimore City now, which is incredible, but she was on his cabinet back then. And so just to see the way he modeled his respect for others and legacy and succession building and things like that to Dr. Andres Alonso is a role model of mine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll end with Bill Hite. You know, I literally wouldn't be sitting in this chair if it wasn't for him in so many tangible and intangible ways. Simple things that, like when I joined the district and I sat on his cabinet, he introduced me to his wife. And that seems like a really small thing. It's a really big thing. She and I are amazing friends. She picked out my suit for my first interview as a superintendent. And he said directly to me one day that, like, well, there's certain things that I just can't do with you that she can. And I'll just let that sit. Then he made sure every other Black woman superintendent that he had a relationship with knew about me, because there's certain things that they can do that I can't do. And I think about, I tell him all the time, he's like my first call. 3 years in, and literally 2 weeks ago, I was like, hi, so today this happened. And he was on a plane and the plane was landing. And he was like, hey, the plane is landing. I will call you the second it hits the ground. Literally, like you could hear the people like, welcome to California. And he's walking through the airport and I'm like, all right. And I know now, I got 5 minutes. I'm like, this is what's happening. This is what I'm thinking about doing. What am I not seeing? And he's like, all right, well, do you need to cry first? Because sometimes you just need to cry. And I was like, no, I don't need to cry right now. And he's like, all right, bet. And don't mess it up. And, you know, and then later, hours later, he'll send the text and be like, how'd it go? Like that, you know, Bill believes in creating leadership trees. He's created so many superintendents all across the country. But that allyship of like, you didn't just work for me. And David, I think what you named is what's palpable for me is you don't just work, you don't serve for a moment in time. These people are a part of your professional journey for the rest of your life. And I think there are certain men in this work who deeply understand that. They understand that they will be with you year 1 as an assistant soup, year 3 as a state chief, and wherever else the road takes you. Please don't yell at me for cursing, Julie, I'm sorry. But I think about Bill, and very similarly, the mutual admiration. And I remember he said, when you're not on my org chart, our relationship will become dramatically more improved when you are no longer on my org chart. And he could not have told more of the truth. And so every single day, I'm still trying, I'm like, look, I did this good thing. And you need that. You need to make your mentors and your sponsors proud, because it's a very, very hard job. And so having that is really important. So I'll end there. And I know I'm going to get in trouble because I cursed on a, do we have a censor? Goodness.
We'll sort it out on the back end. Yeah, I'm getting comments. I mean, a huge thank you to all of you, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Romero, Dr. Grant, David. This has been so practical. It's so concrete, the sets of recommendations that you all have shared. And I'm just so grateful for your leadership every single day, for your friendship. And I think this point I really want to underscore that Dr. Grant was just talking about. about the importance of sponsors as being there at so many different stages of your career. And they're there not just when things are great, like keeping them informed and making sure that they are your very first phone call when things are not so good is just as important, because when they use their power to open up doors for you and to vouch for you, they want to be there through it all. And that is one of the most important lessons that you can learn about the role of sponsorship and really keeping your sponsor as close as possible. So I want to end thanking all of you. We're going to put up on the screen some QR codes for more on Women Leading Ed's playbook, our superintendent research project, and the work of the National Center for Grow Your Own. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out and attending today and participating in the dialogue. Thank you for your allyship and efforts to advance women in educational leadership. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.